The princess displayed the other fashion point of the day, the just-above-the-knee skirt, when she and the Duchess slipped away from the rest of the royal party to go for a drink on their own, a bit like two schoolgirls playing truant.
Fergie and Di seemed promising additions to the royal household, ready to be molded into their new roles in the public eye. Diana, with her youth and innocence, was just 20 years old when she married. A shy young woman with a strong eagerness to please, seemingly ready to one day become queen and mother to an heir and spare. Sarah, in some ways, was the opposite, which was no bad thing. She had a strong head on her, a working career, and a no-nonsense attitude. However, in 1992, the monarchy came burning down in every sense of the phrase.
People see the royal family as the upstanding middle-class morality, and the more divorces and scandals and things we have, I think it erodes the sort of very foundation of the monarchy.
A huge shift in the monarchy was triggered by two young and seemingly harmless outsiders.
We have all contributed to the climate in which this happened, and we must all think more carefully in the future.
I think what happened yesterday in Paris was a shocking event, and shocking in very many senses of the word. I think it will shock the country into really arguing about privacy law in a way which I don't think it has been argued about previously.
The debate about the intrusiveness of the paparazzi is growing. Unlike France, we don't have the legal right to stop photographers from publishing pictures of us taken in public places. Hello has on occasion used paparazzi photos. The latest issue, 650,000 copies, due out tomorrow, has been shredded because of an article about Diana and Dodiel fired and marriage. Hello is bringing out a revised edition. The print run has been increased to 1 million.
She will always be in our thoughts and forever in our hearts. And that's how I see her.
Just sorrow. Just sorrow and wish we'd told before we loved her.
They're sitting watching. Television schedules have been cleared around the world because no one has ever had views of the royal family quite like this, or indeed views of London, Londoners, and the British people.
Now, if you look just under the "of" in Diana of Love, that is the Duchess of York. She, of course, and Diana are great friends at times. The relationship a bit up and down, I think. Like so many other things in Diana's life, it was all so normal.
The pair had been friends for years and depended on each other after their divorces. They holidayed in the south of France in 1996 with their children, William, Harry, Eugenie, and Beatrice, getting used to single life and co-parenting. Both had stuck by each other even when cruel headlines compared the two and rumored about a feud. Eventually, the ex-royal sisters-in-law came to a head after Sarah released her autobiography, My Story.
Sarah, Duchess of York, has said she deplores the fact that the Princess of Wales is considered a legitimate target for a shameful and chilling attack from which she can no longer defend herself. But despite official denials of cooperation, there may be some substance to the book, says one royal author.
In 1997, after Diana's passing, Ferguson told Harper's Bazaar, "Because we were like siblings, we rode. And the saddest thing, at the end, we hadn't spoken for a year. I tried, wrote letters, thinking whatever happened didn't matter. Let's sort it out." The day before she died, she rang a friend of mine and said, "Where's that red? I want to talk to her." They didn't manage to speak before her death, a tragic ending to many years of close friendship.
The dress is in ivory silk Duchess satin, its bodice embroidered with the thistle and bees from her new coat of arms. The train, all 17.5 feet of it, has hearts and anchors and waves on it, and a big A for Andrew.
The crowd asked for it, and the crowd got it. The kiss. The grand finale to a perfect day, when everyone had difficulties suppressing a smile. The happy crowd surged down the Mall, trapping ITN's Martin Lewis.
Absolute chaos. I'm being swept forward with the crowd. In fact, I don't think I could get away from them if I wanted to. What sort of days have been for you, sir?
Oh, it's been great. It's really good.
It was a good day, too, for more commercial concerns. The first copies of the wedding dress were underway the moment it was revealed. And now, less than 2 hours later, the first replica was complete.
Andrew and Sarah got married only 4 years after Charles and Diana. It seemed to be a much more loving and spontaneous occasion, where Charles rather awkwardly would kiss Diana. The two of them embraced on the balcony at Buckingham Palace. Fergie was seen as a breath of fresh air, a middle-class girl marrying into the royal family, whereas Diana was very aristocratic. The seminal event of Sarah's life, and what explains her, is at the age of 13, her mother basically left the marriage and went off with a polo player called Hector Barrantes, in fact eventually moved to Argentina. Now Diana had gone through the same experience. Her mother had left her to marry a man called Peter Shand Kidd. So both of them were brought up by their fathers, and there was this absent mother. And I think certainly with Fergie, it has given her very low self-esteem. She tries to earn self-esteem by buying friendship, by being generous in terms of presents. She coped by overeating. But as a child, before the breakup, she was a very successful show jumper, fearless as a skier. She was head girl at her school. She was, an all-rounder, really.
I did know her quite well, because the sort of classes that you have with art, you do get to know the girls well. And she was always a very confident girl, and I think she could cope with most things.
She got 5 O-levels, was good at sports, and became head girl.
She was a very good friend as a schoolgirl. She was good fun. She was held in high regard by her contemporaries, and the pupils, in fact, when she became head girl, they were very, respectful to her.
Sarah never did return to work, but left this personal recorded message for telephone callers.
This is Burton Publishing. Please leave your message after the tone, and Sarah Ferguson will call you back.
She's got one book out already, an illustrated account of the early exhibitions of the Impressionist painters.
It's my book, I want everybody, I want the world to know this, you see. You see, because I'm definitely trying to relate that I'm a working woman. So, spelt wrong, Ferguson, BTK, Graphic Arts, London.
Well, Princess Diana was the daughter of an earl. Her father was Lord Spencer, and he was later Viscount Althorp. They had a house on the Sandringham estate, and then when Diana's grandfather died, they moved to the family stately home, Althorp. And the Spencer family were quite an ancient aristocratic family. I mean, they were actually probably grander than the royal family.
Diana and Fergie had been childhood friends. Their mothers had been at school together. It was Diana who encouraged Fergie to be put on the guest list for Ascot in June 1985. This is when various people are brought together, stay at Windsor, go to the Ascot races. Fergie had had long connections with the royal family. Her father, Ron, was the polo manager for Charles. Fergie likes horses and dogs, like the Queen. She was very down to earth. There had been this long association between the families. And Fergie and Andrew had met as children at polo matches, mainly through this friendship through the mothers.
At first, the exuberant Sarah was popular in the press and blew into the royal family like a breath of fresh air, seemingly a good addition with her fun spirit and straightforward approach. Unlike Fergie, Diana had a more difficult time finding her feet. She was naturally a city girl who enjoyed a good social life and relied on friends for support. However, the palace felt like a very lonely place. She had lost the company of her roommates, whilst also taking little pleasure from hobbies the royal family filled their time with.
There were photographs of Diana looking sad, and I think when they posed in front of Ayers Rock, they looked very apart, although they were standing together. And I think perhaps there was an element of sadness that was showing in the pictures. I mean, when we can only tell by the close-ups that photographers were taking at the time. And I think there was an element of something not being right, or Diana looking really miserable, and it wasn't like they didn't have any sort of togetherness.
During Diana's marriage, she would confide in Sarah as she struggled with her new role. They were even said to share an astrologer. In Ferguson's autobiography, published in 1995, she wrote, "She was 2 years younger than I, and I strove to support and protect her as I would a younger sister, as I still do today as a best friend. Diana was one of the quickest wits I knew. Nobody made me laugh like her." Sarah looked to Diana for support in her role as Duchess. She was especially nervous about photographers, recalling, "I looked over at my friend in befuddlement. 'Just keep smiling,' Diana whispered. I always felt safe in mimicking Diana." Having her good friend Sarah join the royal family seemed a fortunate coincidence for the young princess. Although they leaned on each other for support, family members in the press constantly compared the two.
Diana and Fergie were very close. There was a little bit of jealousy on Diana's part, because she felt that Fergie breezed into the royal family and everyone loved her, and they looked at her, Diana, and thought she was dull, and that Fergie was this load of fun and noisy and lovable, and, well, which she was. But Fergie was very unhappy too.
Diana later revealed to her biographer, Andrew Morton, that Fergie wooed everybody in this family and did it so well. She left me looking like dirt. Prince Charles told her, "I wish you would be like Fergie, all jolly." Their relationship, similar to our current day sisters-in-laws Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle, has been complex and saw them as both best friends and rivals, especially with the involvement of the media.
So, no, Diana and Fergie had this great relationship, and they used to do crazy things together. They got out the Queen Mother's Bentley from the garage, put on a chauffeur's hat and sort of did wheelies all round the drive with the car. No one found out. So they used to do these crazy things, and I think it just lightened the atmosphere for them.
Unfortunately, the press began to make cruel comparisons between the two women, putting a huge strain on their relationship. Standing next to the Princess of Wales for public events was difficult because she would be compared constantly by the press. Diana was not like Sarah, with her blonde hair, long legs, and keen interest in fashion. Diana and I used to talk about it a lot, Sarah said, about what it is to be on the front pages and people judging what size you are.
Their lives are so different to what the majority of the world experience, and they're very private about that. So there's a fascination with what they wear because we expect clothes to reflect our lives. We dress for the demands of our lives, our jobs, where we live. So we're interested in seeing them because we hope it will give away a little bit about what it means to have that kind of role. So I feel like we can only begin to understand the problems, the difficulties, the challenges that royals face when we see them and when we really take the time to look at what they're wearing.
Some of the greatest style revolutions in royal fashion arrive when someone new enters the royal family through marriage. The late Princess of Wales was massively praised for her choice of clothing and is known as a fashion icon to this day. Diana reportedly wanted the longest train in royal wedding history. It was a display of grandiosity and style. The dress sparked numerous copycat versions over the years and is considered an emblem of 1980s fashion and the most iconic wedding dress of all time. The beginning of Diana mania, as the world's obsession, is now known.
It was just like a phenomenon. I mean, people would scream when they saw Diana. It was almost like Beatlemania.
People are still channeling looks that she wore decades ago. She inspires designer collections from Off-White to Celine.
That's a sign of an icon of our times, because she was truly inspirational and unique.
So there's no sort of official royal fashion guidebook which every member of the royal family is given at some point, and they must adhere to every rule. But I think there's a generally accepted belief that women should look quite ladylike, they should look quite elegant, they should look immaculate at all times. There's not really much kind of dressing down. And that they need to kind of honour the engagements that they're attending. So they always want to look right for the occasion, whether that occasion is the state opening of Parliament or whether it's a more relaxed hospital visit. They want to look good in that moment. As the family is modernising, perhaps they're starting to take a few more risks than they would have done in the past as well.
Let's see the back.
Back is lovely, very simple. Nice and full.
This will swirl when I dance, won't it?
Oh yes, it's lovely and full.
Queen's birthday.
Ascot Week is a focus for English high fashion. This was the testing time.
Thin ankles, thin wrists, thin waist.
Good calves.
And the rest, oh.
She and Linka had worked hard on the dress for Ladies' Day.
But it does fit beautifully.
Yeah.
Okay, marvellous.
That's great. Right.
We can go on to the next one.
That's fine.
Right.
Yeah,
all
so
right.
we're all right for Ascot, aren't we?
Oh, I think so.
It was better than all right. This time she was on, or in, a winner.
Standing next to Diana, Sarah stood out even more with her love of diverse, bold patterns, bright colors, puffed shoulders, and unique tailoring methods.
The Duchess chose a not entirely flattering black suit to come to the concert hall of Ontario Place, an entertainment complex built on 3 man-made islands in the harbour.
She was also known for her decadent hair accessories, putting rows of flags, large ribbons, and engraved gemmed shapes throughout.
The Duchess, who has an eye for these things, wore a maple leaf in her bow, a compliment gratefully received by the Canadians.
Some today say she was quite a pioneer in her style, a breath of fresh air and an unsung hero of royal fashion. Unfortunately, with the scrutiny of the press, she was ridiculed for her style at the time, saying her choices was unsuitable and unflattering, only adding to her insecurities within her royal role.
The problem was that she sometimes went too far. She was sometimes too familiar when mystique and dignity was required. And she wasn't as glamorous as Diana. There was a certain amount of jealousy. To start with, Charles thought that Fergie was a good influence on Diana. I think he then realized that the two of them were like naughty little girls together and were not good for each other. Diana quite quickly realized that Fergie could be a bit of a liability, she could be embarrassing, and that she would bring Diana down.
The Duchess of York was first off the coach, bringing the royal family and their teams to Alton Towers. Prince Edward was already there to meet them, well into the spirit of the day, sporting a silly T-shirt. Olympic champion Tessa Sanderson had come well prepared for the inevitable June downpour. She was followed by a string of well-known faces, who in turn were pursued by the photographers.
Well, It's a Royal Knockout was meant to be a way of humanising the royal family. It was organised by Prince Edward and his production company, and the mystique of monarchy had been shattered, and we just saw them as rather vulgar people operating with pretty low-life showbiz types. Fergie, who is a very boisterous, not very sophisticated person, I think went slightly over the top, and it just was seen to be not very respectful to the monarchy, and very vulgar, I think is probably the word that would be used. And this was part of a shifting sense that the royal family, though they were trying to open up and humanise the royal family, had to do it in a different way. This was not a way to earn respect.
Morning rehearsals were a secretive affair, but it emerged that the Duchess of York wasn't exactly playing fair.
I think she's permitting anything. I think anything goes in that team at the moment. Whether they pull themselves short, I don't know.
She just wants to win. We all do, you know. That's half the fun of it.
She got some sort of bet with the Duke of York.
Maybe, I don't know.
This afternoon, the royal party left for the 2-hour drive to Zurich, where a Buckingham Palace spokesman read a statement written by the Prince himself.
All the members of my party, including myself, were skiing off the piste at our own risk. We all accepted, and always have done, that the mountains have to be treated with the greatest respect.
The British Aerospace 146 of the Queen's flight, carrying Major Lindsay's body and the royal skiing party, touched down at Northolt just after 5 o'clock. The Prince and Princess of Wales emerged, followed by the Duchess of York. The horrors of yesterday still fresh in their minds, the close friend gone. Prince Charles had earlier telephoned Mrs. Lindsay and offered condolences. Now he was to meet her face to face. The coffin, draped in a Union flag, was carried slowly to the waiting hearse. The royal party and Mrs. Lindsay, out of public sight, stood to attention as the coffin was loaded, heads sometimes bowed. Mrs. Lindsay walked to her car, clutching the carrier bag brought back by the Duchess of York, containing some of Major Lindsay's personal effects. Married last July, she's expecting her first child in May. The Prince of Wales said his farewells, then drove off alone to Windsor for a meeting with the Queen, who herself had grown very fond of Major Lindsay when he was her equerry. The Princess and Duchess were driven off together. After a stop at Buckingham Palace, they're both tonight at Kensington Palace. Vernon Mann News at 10, RAF Northolt.
After the skiing accident in 1988 and the death of her close friend Major Hugh Lindsay, everything seemed to change for the couples. Tension and pressures had been building in their royal roles, friendships, and marriages.
And at one point, the two of them had agreed that they would announce their separations from their husband at the same time. Diana did the dirty on Fergie and let Fergie make the announcement and wanted to test the waters to see what the reaction was. So she was kind of hung out to dry. And the relationship with Diana was never quite as close. Fergie makes claims that they were, but they had not been talking for a long time. Diana was very upset when Fergie said that she'd picked up a verruca from a pair of shoes she'd borrowed from Diana. And so that relationship was never as close.
Queen Elizabeth referred to 1992 as an annus horribilis, Latin for a horrible year. It was a year that 3 royal marriages collapsed. A fire destroyed more than 100 rooms in Windsor Castle, and Sarah's extremely heated scandal spooked Britain and the monarchy.
1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure. In the words of one of my more sympathetic correspondents, it has turned out to be an annus horribilis. I suspect that I'm not alone in thinking it so. Indeed, I suspect that there are very few people or institutions unaffected by these last months of worldwide turmoil and uncertainty.
The monarchy has no power, they only have influence, and at this moment it was their shenanigans that were making the news, which is completely wrong, and she was very concerned about the institution of the monarchy with all this scandal going on. I think they were both very sad. Diana in particular never wanted to get divorced. In her heart, although she was with another man, Charles was the one that got away, and she always had a place in her heart for Charles. And it wasn't what she wanted, and she felt a failure. They both felt they'd failed, and they both felt they'd failed their children. So it was very, very sad for both of them.
Disclosures about her private life and a succession of stories about failed business ventures.
The Princess of Wales was visiting a Barnardo's project today. She ignored questions about her sister-in-law, who is also one of her closest friends.
Ma'am?
What do you feel about that? Whose fault was it, do you think?
I don't know whose fault it was, but I hate to see divorce anywhere.
Relationships are difficult, and I'm sure that when people are always asking about it, it makes it even more difficult, taking pictures and watching so carefully.
Well, I think Fergie's a very independent woman, and it looks like she's making a decision that's in her best interest, and I support that.
Well, if the briefing is correct, it looks as if the palace is trying to very much distance itself from the Duchess, to portray her as the one who's in the wrong, who started the proceedings for separation. And it looks as if it might be that they're trying a job of social execution on the Duchess.
The Duchess of York left Balmoral Castle today using a side entrance of the royal estate to drive to Aberdeen Airport. Her 2 daughters, Princess Eugenie and Princess Beatrice, were with her. No longer the luxury or privilege of an aircraft of the Queen's flight, for the Duchess just an ordinary scheduled flight to Heathrow. Buckingham Palace say the departure was as planned before the publication of the photos, which showed her half naked at the poolside with her Texan financial advisor. The Duke of York, though, looked relaxed today as he joined the Queen at the traditional Sunday service at Balmoral. Details of any divorce settlement will have to decide on who gets custody of the Yorks' 2 children. They are 5th and 6th in line to the throne. That will have been at the centre of discussions by advisers at Balmoral Castle over the last week.
Much later on, Prince Charles did an official biography with Jonathan Dimbleby. And Dimbleby asked Prince Charles, really, when his affair with Camilla started, and he said when his marriage had irrevocably broken down. And that was after Prince Harry was born. Everyone was writing frantically, and it was an enormous story. He'd admitted adultery, basically, on television. The night that the interview came out, Diana was at the Serpentine Gallery.
The press thought that she was going to wear a completely different dress. So you can imagine their surprise when she steps out of the car and she is wearing this gorgeous little black dress.
She just looked amazing, and she called it her revenge dress.
You had to look the best, she had to perform the best. So I said, you go out there, you stride, you hold your head high, you put your hand out firmly and say to yourself, I'm Diana. I'm the mother of the future King of England, and I'm here to stay. And that's exactly what she did.
The newly single ex-royals stuck together after the divorce, going on holiday with their children and guiding each other. Both also focused heavily on their charity work. Humanitarian work played an essential part in Princess Diana's life at home and abroad. In her role as the Princess of Wales, Diana had become intensely involved with numerous charities, including those the royal family had historically overlooked. Capitalizing on her platform, she campaigned tirelessly for myriad progressive causes. Her work with AIDS and leprosy charities would be some of her most influential. She visited and openly shook hands with those affected by the disease.
She'd got her new life, and she wanted people to know what she was doing, and she was really very involved in her charity work.
Dodging her way around a helium balloon, the princess joined the youngsters for tea.
One of my greatest pleasures has been my association with people like yourself. During those years, I've met many thousands of wonderful and extraordinary people, both here and around the world. The cared for and the carers. You have also given me an education by teaching me more about life and living than any books or teachers could have done. My debt of gratitude to you all is immense. I hope in some small way I have been of service in return.
Historically speaking, the royal family, when they met with crowns, they often wore gloves as a way of not catching germs and not becoming ill. But Princess Diana made headlines because she chose not only not to wear gloves to meet patients with AIDS, but she also hugged them and held their hands.
The atmosphere here is I mean, we are people living with AIDS, not dying from AIDS, and we're all getting along and fighting the disease. And through this ward, we're able to get mutual support from each other to do that.
It's going to jump up, and this will take out everybody in 25 metres.
And the anti-mines issue is just one she says she'll continue to support around the world.
It's been a difficult and controversial 12 months for the Duchess, with the breakdown of her marriage and the row over those photos. During 3 days visiting sufferers of motor neurone disease, she said her charity work had helped her cope, but that the priority was still to maintain her own family unit.
Andrew and I speak every day, and it's very important that we do keep that huge friendship, which we've always said we are. And it's great, the children, we all have a great time.
Has what's happened changed your view of the world?
It's made me very much more thoughtful and made me very much more aware of trying to control my spontaneity a little bit so I don't fall into awful great big poo traps and the ramifications are too much for me to cope with.
Was that a fault? Was that something you saw as a fault in yourself?
Oh, I think so. I think I made huge faults, don't we all? Make huge mistakes. We've just got to live and learn and get on with life. My life is very much just, seeing each day how it is, helping people as much as possible, looking after my girls, and hopefully in the months to come, the laughter and the joy will come springing back into it.
Her main focus was on motor neuron disease, which was not well published before. One man was struggling to speak to the Duchess, bursts into tears as she offers him some comforting words, telling him, "I will be your voice." Unfortunately, Her work hardly received any coverage due to the media favoring other members of the royal family and the supposed unphotogenic nature of the causes involved. Diana wanted to reduce her time in the public eye, protecting herself and her sons from very persistent paparazzi, which was taking a huge toll on her life.
When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did. I realized then their attention would inevitably focus on both our private and public lives. But I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become, nor the extent to which it would affect both my public duties and my personal life in a manner that's been hard to bear. At the end of this year, when I've completed my diary of official engagements, I will be reducing the extent of the public life I've led so far. I hope you can find it in your hearts to understand and to give me the time and space that has been lacking in recent years.
Fergie, however, wanted and relied on her status more heavily.
And I think the problem with both of them is they've got very expensive taste. They've mixed with jet setters. They want to be able to live at the same level, and that is not possible on the sort of money he's got as on a naval pension, and also the money that the Queen was giving him as a working royal. And this has caused both of them huge problems. And it's something that needn't have happened. Other members of the royal family have had similar problems, like Sophie, and managed to bypass them by basically keeping their noses clean afterwards. Unfortunately, I think Andrew and Fergie like the jet set life, and they think they can get away with it. And so there are lots and lots of moments one wonders where they may have abused their position with charities in order to, for example, pay for travel, in which they were doing something else as well. Sarah has also had her problems, as she's been in debt to the extent of several £1 million. Sometimes she's not been able to pay for goods in shops. It's forced her to do some pretty demeaning things. She was paid to attend a ball in Vienna. She's opening sort of shopping malls. But she was caught, for example, in a sting operation by a newspaper offering access to Prince Andrew for £500,000. So there's a suggestion that she's abused her position as a member of the royal family, again for personal benefit.
The Duchess's children's books, however, had a very positive reception and still receive good reviews online today. They often feature children with red hair, like Little Red, and have an adventurous spirit, somewhat a reflection of herself. Tea with Ruby is a tale of a girl who can't seem to maintain her good manners until she is unexpectedly invited for tea with the Queen. In desperation, she asks everyone she knows how to polish her poise, running to family members, to the playground, and to the postman for advice. Somewhat mirroring how Sarah, and most likely Diana, felt entering the royal family with little guidance. Tea with Ruby became a New York Times bestseller.
Fergie and the Queen had a very good relationship, in spite of the fact that Prince Philip couldn't stand Fergie. I think the Queen was very keen that her grandchildren shouldn't suffer because of the divorce. And she would be in touch with Fergie a lot. I mean, I've talked to people who say that the Queen often rang her. Fergie was always very respectful of the Queen. And so I think the Queen remained, with a soft spot. And that's continued now. Camilla has very much tried to bring Fergie within the fold. she has been pretty loyal to the royal family. She hasn't spilled the beans about it. And she's played a long game. And as a result, she's still very much within the sort of royal circles.
Let's see. Here she comes. We know, I mean, she'd let it be known, but she was absolutely thrilled to be invited to this wedding because she didn't attend the last royal wedding. So it's quite a moment for her, Sassy, to walk down with the crowds there at Windsor Castle. Lovely wave, very happy to be there.
She looks comfortable. The collar really flatters the neckline. And again, small hat. It's not like she's trying to compete with anything.
Well, that's what I liked. I thought she looked great.
Yeah.
After Her Majesty's passing, the Duke and Duchess of York were given the honor of caring for her beloved corgis, Mick and Sandy. The palace picked two promising young women with the potential to modernize the monarchy. The outsiders definitely rocked the boat, but seemingly too far, and neither of them were able to survive. This ended in a tragic tale for all parties involved and broke hearts around the world. If Diana's post-divorce life was marked by tragedy, then Sarah's was marked by farce. However, fortunately for Fergie, she has had the years to rebuild herself and attempt to adjust people's perceptions.
And the power of authenticity as well. I think in a world where we're sort of all told to be similar or not do stuff, the queer community is always standing up and being themselves. I can imagine that inspires you as well.
Well, you're very kind to say that. It really does. You know, that's why coming here tonight has been so. I really wanted to come. I really, really wanted to be here, and I wanted to support Sarah, who founded it. And I wanted to be here because I know what it feels like in 35 years to be ostracized sometimes, to be judged, to be not accused of being not normal. And really, you just want to be yourself and to be allowed to be free to express yourself, which is very, very difficult.
She's never once dimmed her fiery personality and has kept alive the mischievous spirit we saw in both herself and Diana to this day.